Ready?
Action.
Hello everyone!
Woo!
Guys, we have a very special guest on the channel today. This is Christie Stott.
Oh my God.
Guys, this is the design of
Our
our channel logo.
I'm a super
I
fan.
mean, she's so much more than that.
Yeah.
I comment on every single video.
Cree is one of my lifelong friends. We went to school together, and then when I came to uni, Soph obviously got to meet Cree.
Yes, got the honour.
Cree has actually been like a huge part of like, well, my life, but also like my faith journey. And like Cree's my only Christian friend at home. Come on, represent. If it wasn't for this woman, let's just put it like, I don't know where I'd be today.
Oh, that is so cute.
That is
So
so cute.
yeah, we wanted to do a little video today chatting about hearing the Lord's voice.
The Lord.
Hearing
the Lord.
the voice of God, Jesus
Yes.
speaking to us, as I'm sure a lot of people know by now. We're Christians. That's what you know. You were talking about how Cree is very key in your own faith journey, and this is something that's on Cree's heart,
Yes,
on all of our
sure.
hearts to talk about. So
Yeah.
we're like, let's have a little chat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and also when it comes to the topic of hearing God's voice, you're the first person that comes to my mind.
Oh.
Because you would say, wouldn't you, like, that
Yeah.
hearing God's voice is something that you're like particularly passionate about,
Yeah.
like within like
Yeah.
knowing Jesus. And
Yeah. And I think, well, I mean, we'll dive more into it in the video.
Get your goggles on.
Get your
guys.
goggles on. But I think fundamentally, hearing God's voice was the most life-changing thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
And therefore it's like a big statement. But it is, and it's like, I think it's if I could leave anything from my life, it would be like helping people to understand like God loves you and he wants to speak to you because it's what you're made to do.
Alright, so just to give a little bit of context,
Yeah.
when was the first time you felt like you heard God's voice?
I was in year 7 at Spring Harvest.
Spring Harvest, shout out anyone who went to Spring Harvest.
Shout out my Gold Hill crew. Basically, Spring Harvest is like this Christian festival in Butlins every Easter.
Yeah. In the caravan.
in the chalet. And I remember people basically being like, oh, I've heard God say this to me. Or I just feel like God's saying this. And like, I was almost frustrated. I was just like, this does not make any sense. I was like, one, why can't I hear it? Is there something wrong with me? Two, like, are they just insane? Like, I genuinely was like, maybe they're like just hearing voices, you know? But I remember even when I was 11 having this hunger, being like, well, you know what, if that is real, like, I want it. Like, I want to hear it. Like, what does God sound like? And so I got my friend Anna, and I was like, I texted her, and she was in the toilet, and I was like, Anna, come with me, we're getting prayer. So I literally, like, the meeting...
Literally 11.
Yeah, I know, I was just so,
What were you
like...
texting on your BlackBerry?
Yeah, my BlackBerry curve, my big BlackBerry curve.
Oh my gosh, Blackberry curve.
I literally
Shout
remember.
out.
And so the meeting was going on, and I went to the back where there were these, like, youth leaders, and I went for prayer.
People like me.
Yeah, and me, full circle. And I just basically this woman was there, and I just told her everything. I was like, I'm so frustrated, I don't get it. I want it, if it's real though, I want to hear it. And she just said something that like literally changed my life. And this is how, like, if anyone asks me about the voice of God, I still to this day do what she told me. And she just said, okay, we're just gonna pray and then we're gonna wait. And I trust that God is going to talk to you. And so the first thing that comes into your head that is good, that is lovely, that like feels like love, we're just going to trust that it's God. And so I was like, okay, fine, just let's give it a go. Whatever. And so we just waited there, me, Anna, and this lady. I don't know who this lady is, but she literally changed my life.
We need to find her.
I need to find her and be like, you transformed. We were waiting there, and then I remember this voice, like it was like, it sounded like a thought in my head, but it was like a feeling that came with it. And it said to me, oh, it was actually so cute, it was like, you are special and unique, and that's why I love you. And I remember at that time I was like having just like friendship issues, and I was just really struggling with like being unique, and I just wanted to fit in a bit like everyone else.
So
it like filled my heart, and I remember I just burst into tears, and I was just crying, and I was like, why am I crying? Like, but because it was just a thought, but it wasn't. It was like, it literally felt like I was at home. Like I never felt love like that before in my whole life. And then I remember going back to my friendship group, and like the worship had started, and I was crying, and then they were like praying for me, and then I just heard this voice be like, I love you, and I just cried and cried and cried. And for me, even now, when I feel like I hear God's voice, it feels and sounds the same as that, like that feeling of like,
wow,
well, the creator of the universe like wants to communicate with me, and that genuinely changed my entire life. And that, like, since that point I just followed Jesus.
I'm just imagining little 11-year-old Cree.
In my Hollister hoodie, I literally, my pink Hollister hoodie,
You
I
changed
remember
your
it.
BBM status. Just heard God's voice.
I remember it. And I remember going back to school, because it was an Easter holiday.
No replies on a direct line we got right now.
No replies. Chatting to the Lord. Yeah.
So if you're in year 7 or like younger and you're watching, you're not too young to hear the voice
You're
of God.
never too young. And then, so do you feel like that is how you've continued to hear God's voice?
Yeah. Hearing God's voice, it's so simple, but it does take courage to like put yourself out there and kind of look a bit weird. When I told my friends I was hearing God's voice, like, it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound very normal all the time, but when it happens to you and it becomes a regular part of your life, it is so normal.
Yeah.
But like, I still hear it most of the time, just like a thought in my head. In John 10, Jesus is talking about being a shepherd and then us being a sheep. And it talks about how his sheep know his voice. And it is that thing of, the more you know God, the more you like invest in your relationship with him, the more you're in your Bible, the more you're making him like your everything, the more naturally his voice will come to you. Like, even now, like, I was actually chatting to God in the car on the way here, and it will often sound like just a dialogue in my mind, but I feel like now I'm so used to the voice of God that I know it's him. And that doesn't mean always, like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, is that God? And it will feel a bit like, oh, that doesn't feel very loving, or it doesn't feel very kind, or like it's not in the Bible. And if it's not in the Bible, then it won't be God, because God says, like, I am the Word, like Jesus is the Word, he is the Bible. And then there was one time I did hear an audible voice. I remember that. And like, it was like a man being like, I'm with you. And being like, rah!
So do you feel like actually a lot of it, when people say that they're struggling to hear God's voice, is actually like almost like lacking the confidence or the courage to like believe and like be assured in themselves that a certain thought that they're hearing or thinking is his voice?
Yeah, I think so, because everything with God can be simplified to the way you think about a child and a parent. Because God is, all through the Bible, God communicates his love as a father for a child. There's never a time where you've done something too wrong or when you've messed up too much that God won't want to talk to you. I heard it described like this. Like, religion says, like, oh, I've messed up, like, I've got to, like, I can't talk to my dad, he'll be so angry. But Jesus is like, oh, I've messed up, I've got to talk to my dad. I need my dad. He's a parent, like, he just loves to talk to you, because fundamentally he loves you so much. So I think once you understand that, of like, well, I am worthy of God loving me and speaking to me, then it kind of it frees you to be like, okay, God, like, there's nothing I can do to make you want to talk to me more. And I'm never going to be too moody that you don't want to talk to me. So let's give it a go.
What are you saying?
Let's give it a go.
I think as well, there is, in saying all that, there is also a massive thing around patience.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely went through a season, where I'd say it was like around kind of the middle of when I was at uni, where I was kind of like, I just don't feel like I really hear God speak to me, or I don't know, like, why don't I, have these encounters that I see other people having. But it's like you were saying, it's like, Well, I was kind of literally just, shooting up a quick little, oh, what about this? Literally probably waiting for 5 seconds. Oh gosh, I haven't heard him speak. I think sometimes we want to put our own time restraints on that. Like, okay, I've got 2 minutes, so you better speak to me in 2 minutes. And that's not really how it can always work. In the same way as, like, if you have a friend, you wouldn't be like, right, you got 2 minutes, tell me what you want to tell me.
Yeah.
You would be like, oh, let's meet up, let's go for a coffee, I'll give you the space to talk to me. And it's similar with that. You can't just be like, right, we've got 30 seconds, so go. Right, well, time up, off I go. Like, so I think there's a lot of, we need to sometimes put it on God's terms and not our own.
How do you feel like you've like distinguished your own thoughts from God's thoughts? As in, like, has there ever been a time? Thank you. Has there ever been a time where you've been like, okay, thoughts come into my mind, or is that God or is that me? Like,
so many times. So many times. And I've had it before where God has told me some really big things that I've been like, I think I had you wrong that time. Oh, you're like, you got the wrong person. Like, did you mean like someone else? And I have wrestled with God. Don't get me wrong. This has not always been like, oh, God said this, and I agree. And like,
I love it.
I love it. Like, it's always been loving. I'm not saying God like can ever be mean or like unloving, but sometimes he'll say things to me that I'm like, I can't do that, or like when I need to step out in something, or maybe something about my future, and I've been like, God, I can't do that, or like I'm not enough, like
even just like, I don't want to.
Yeah, or just a thing of like, yeah, that sounds like I would like that, but from A to B, I'm not seeing it. Like, how do I get there? But the way like I discern if it's God or if it's not is like, honestly, just if he keeps on saying it, and if he keeps on revealing it to me, and getting to a point with Jesus where you're such good friends that you trust his character to the point of like, God, you're not going to say something to me because I can't handle it.
Yeah.
If God's saying something really big to you, like maybe it's like a word about your future, or like, I am not enough to handle that by myself, so it actually can lead you into such a beautiful dependence on Jesus, where, you know, it's like, okay, if you're the leader, I'll just follow, and you know how I'm getting from A to B. I don't need to. And so I can discern the voice if it's love, and whereas if it's like a voice that is shaming you or making you like scared, or like,
that's not his voice.
That's not his voice, because it's summed up in John 10, where it says, like, Jesus has come to give you life, and life in all its fullness. Therefore, when Jesus speaks to you, it will be
life-giving,
full of life. Whereas the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, which means that voice of like stealing things from you, like killing life in you, or making you afraid, that is not God's voice.
Like, learning to distinguish between your own thoughts and God's voice also just quite simply comes with practice and with time. Like, even in the sense of, like Cree saying, as you begin to like become confident in hearing his voice and acting on it, you begin to like almost build up a history of seeing God's faithfulness and seeing, oh, actually that time, you know, at first I felt really confused when God like asked me to do this or step out in this way, and I really didn't want to do it, but in the moment I just chose obedience and I chose to trust him, and then now in hindsight I can see why he asked me to do that, and the freedom that I experienced from it, or what came out of me doing that. And as you have more and more and more of those experiences that build up, I think you just grow in confidence in trusting his voice, even when he says something that at first seems a bit rogue, and you're like, are you sure?
That's it. I think there's actually a massive connection between hearing God's voice and then acting on it. I think that, as like you were saying, Rach, as you almost build up a link between those two things, it brings so much boldness.
Well, yeah, because you actually see, oh, that was God, because I saw the outcome.
One thing I find really helpful is I like go off alone. I do think there's something about when if you are going through a situation where you're like, I do not know what to do, or I'm so done with feeling really anxious about this or whatever. There is something about like getting in your car or getting on the bus or whatever, and going somewhere to sort out with God. And I've always found those times so fruitful.
You see, like Jesus does that the whole time.
Yeah, Jesus
constantly
always
retreating. So it's like to speak to his Father.
Yeah.
And it needs, like, I love people, but I need to be alone with God, like, at least once a day, or else I just implode. Like, I'm just not myself.
But like, what would you say to maybe someone who's new, or like new to faith, or they're just kind of going on a journey with wanting to hear God's voice, like when you were 11, and they are kind of, so they've heard what we've said about, okay, I could have a thought, and that could be God, or it could be me. How would you say that you can get to know God's character in order to then help you to like distinguish the thoughts of yours and then of God's voice?
So good. Yeah, I would say my overall thing with knowing God is that there is no condemnation. Like, with God there's never shame. Like, he's never going to embarrass you, and he's never going to make you feel like you're not enough. And so if you're just starting out with this and you feel that thing of like almost failure with hearing God's voice, like, that is not from God. Like, he is only encouraging, and he is only loving. And so when you're figuring out his nature, I would just say, like, it's literally just like a human friendship. Like, if I wanted to get closer to like a friend, it is like, okay, I'm going to spend some time with you, I'm going to talk to you. I find it really helpful picturing Jesus in front of me
That's good,
and speaking, and also realising, like, God speaks to you. Yeah, it can be like through a thought in your head, but it can also be like through a conversation with a friend where you're like, oh, that really actually feels like that wisdom isn't just from you, you know, or like it can be, it
like
can
God
be through
speaks
so
through
many
other
things.
people.
Yeah, it can be through like even like nature. Like, God
Mm.
speaks to me all the time through the sky,
Through all your senses.
You smell. You might smell.
Exactly. Lord.
Like, taste something.
Taste and see.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
I think, and we were talking a bit before about as well, like the Bible. The Bible shows us God's character and who he is, and the things that he'll say, how he will react to certain things, and like what he's about. And so as you understand, and it's almost like learning. It's like, you know, maybe we can't see God physically and maybe have a conversation that would feel as, you know, you've got a person in real life sitting there, but there's literally a whole book that essentially describes and shows you who God is and what he's like.
And also the things that he says over people in the Bible, he's saying over us. So you can literally read like directly what God's saying over you. Like when God says to like Jesus, you are my son in whom I'm well pleased, he's saying that over each of us today.
For me, like, I just have to read my Bible every day, not because I have to, because I'm bad if I don't, but because if I want a thriving relationship with God, it's just a part of what it takes to like be in constant friendship with him, because like he will speak to you through the Bible. Like when people say like God's silent, like I don't believe that, because it's like you always have the Bible, therefore God will always speak to you. One thing actually I just remembered I wanted to say was like, for me, God's voice like changed my life in terms of my mind. And like I went through a time in my second year where we were just talking about it before the video, where I just was experiencing a lot of fear and anxiety, like, and I remember being quite frustrated or confused with God, being like, God, why can't you just like speak and everything just go away? But it was something I was dealing with time and time again. And then I got to the point where I was so frustrated. I remember I was on my knees at church and I was like, I don't want to be scared anymore. Like, I'm so done with this anxiety. And I felt God speak to me and say, Cree, I want you to get a notebook and a pen and have an hour with me every day, because I've got some things to teach you.
I got some things to say to you, girl.
So literally, I was so at the end of myself. I was literally like, great. The next day, went to Waterstones, bought a notebook, and I sat down, and I couldn't have any distractions, and it was just me. And what I would do is I would write down everything I was anxious about, and sometimes it would be like a sentence, and sometimes it'd be like pages. And then in a different coloured pen, I would write down what I thought God was saying to me.
But at the time, Cree telling me that she was doing that and being like, oh, you should try it. And it almost forces you to then talk to God and then wait for him to reply. I think there's something really powerful about literally like seeing the conversation between you and God.
It replaces all your like fear with truth, because you're literally like offering up the lie you're believing or the fear, and then you're letting
And
God to
hearing
renew
his voice.
your mind, and like it's just a really good way of practicing, like, and an easy way of hearing God, I find.
Yeah.
I would just say, actually, if you're not a Christian,
Last words.
last words, if you're not a Christian and you're watching this and you want to try it, there's just like what is wrong with just giving it a go?
What have you got to lose?
Yeah, because I remember, like, honestly, I've never had the feeling like it of God's love. I've tried other things and they don't. They
What
just.
have you tried?
Literally.
Couple WKDs wasn't hitting it.
Yeah. Nothing. I promise you, with my whole heart, I mean it. There's nothing like it. And once you taste it, once you like feel the love of God and hear His voice, it's ruined me for life. Can't go back. So.
I love
But
that.
yeah, I love you guys. Thanks for having me on the
Wow.
channel.
Oh,
I feel so
my
alive.
goodness.
What a chat.
What
Oh,
a freaking
My God.
chat.
Guys, keep liking, keep subscribing, keep commenting.
Call to action.
Guys, at Olive Letter, at
At
Christie Stott Photography.
Yeah, that's when
my
you want to
new
be on.
business
Stott
venture.
Photography.
But,
But guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you found it encouraging, that Jesus spoke to you through us. A big thank you to you,
Yeah,
Cree.
guys, I love you.
We love her a lot. As you can tell, she is one of a kind.
precious. Well, we'll go and get our lunch.
Well, guys, we will see you in our next video.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.